such as Donald Trump or even Tony Blair. They have booming voices and their delivery is, they always nail it. And the same with Boris Johnson. But yeah, Keir, he just comes across as a bit watery and a little bit drippy.
Yeah, he really does. And that's the problem. And also, I mean, I'm going to be talking to somebody later on in the show about the definition of a compulsive liar, right? And I'm not suggesting for a moment that would be my description of the Prime Minister. But I mean, he came out of the weekend with a thing that said basically, I've dedicated my life to making Britain safe and for safeguarding people in Britain. And there are MPs who are having a go at him saying, hang on a minute, you were a human rights lawyer who stopped a load of Jamaican criminals from being deported back to Jamaica, several of whom then committed further crimes in this country. And that was down to you and your human rights law.
Well, I mean, even when we look at what's happening today, I mean, children are being murdered in extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
And, he's trying to cover it up. And then you find out the cops are involved. I don't really think that he has any plan to how to safeguard our people, because people are coming in. What were you saying? 1 million people are coming in a year, and now he's actually not even going to vet anybody coming into the country.
Right. Well, now we're being told as well that the Labour government are doing away with the law that was brought in by the Tories, which said that if you come to this country illegally on a small boat, you will never be able to become a UK citizen. They're now reversing that so that you can now become a UK citizen if you come here illegally, which is madness.
Well, it's terrifying. And I think there was a story a few years ago about how a man who pretended that he was under 18 was actually 35.
Right.
And he was living in some family. I think it's absolutely disgraceful. And you see the American government are doing the opposite. They're vetting people at whatever cost.
Right.
Because it's important to know who is in the country, where they're coming from, and if they have any criminal record.
Right. Well, the Americans are also loading people onto planes and flying them back out of the country, back to where they came from. Well, when the Colombians tried to stop that last weekend, they got a very fierce lesson in the power of American tariffs and the power of America's president. But let's have a look, talking about safeguarding, let's have a look at Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary. She was on Laura Kuenssberg's show at the weekend, and she was a bit, shall we say, wishy-washy when it came to the subject of protection of people.
So whose job is it then?
So it would be a combination at the moment, and it is not working effectively. So you have the Lancashire Police had contact with him. They will have responsibilities about somebody who might be a danger to the public. The social services and they have multi-agency protection networks and the early help.
But what you're suggesting is if it's everybody's job, it's no one's job. You are the Home Secretary. What are you going to do about it right now?
So the measures we're already introducing is we're having a review of the PREVENT programme to see how far PREVENT can address these issues for young people, for example, where there is a mixed or unclear ideology or who may be obsessed with things like school massacres. So one issue is what more can PREVENT do?
I mean, is it any wonder that PREVENT can't actually do any kind of job worth a fag end? Because if that's the brief, maybe what we should do is have a look and see whether people are obsessed with school massacres and whether that's interesting or dangerous. I mean, just have a proper set of guidelines which say if you've got some guy who you think is a danger to the public, you must report him to the police and something has to be done about it.
Well, that's the thing, and I feel like they're giving people ideas here.
Right.
At the end of the day, that Southport killer was, he was on PREVENT's radar for 2 years before.
Yeah.
He was a disturbed child, and instead of putting him into some institution, the BBC gave him a job on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
This is what we're dealing with. We need to have institutions where anybody who has any ideas about killing children needs to be put away.
Well, exactly. They need to. I mean, if you really want to safeguard people in this country from dangerous individuals, then you don't wait for them to start killing people. Surely you put them somewhere safe before that happens.
Well, exactly, and that's the whole point. I mean, the clue is in the name, PREVENT.
Yeah, right.
They should have, but they don't have any institutions to put these people in. They don't have anywhere because they have this community living well, which is supposed to deal with people with serious mental health problems, such as schizophrenia. That led to that guy killing those people in Nottingham, stabbing them to death, 3 people. And, you know, these people are let loose on our streets. We need to bring back these big institutions and put people who are disturbed inside them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, Keir Starmer's off to Brussels today. He's going to be told by Emmanuel Macron that Brexit was a failure, and he's going to be told, no doubt, over dinner. He's the first British Prime Minister to attend an EU dinner for 5 years. That the Europeans want us back, closer ties, you know, a more kind of, you know, shall we say, sympathetic trade deal and all of this. But meanwhile, Labour's facing potential investigation over the indirect funding from an organisation while it was in opposition inside the European Union. The Electoral Commission, which regulates party financing in the UK, has said it is looking at a potential regulatory concern about some organisation called the Foundation for European Progressive Studies, who gave a bunch of money, I think £30,000, to the Labour-linked Fabian Society, which apparently is against the rules.
Okay, well, I would say that £30,000 is a drop in the ocean, you know, compared to all the flights David Lammy's been taking. I think some...
Oh, my God, £1 million worth, I think, isn't it?
£1 million, 30,000. By the time that they do the investigation, that's going to be productive, because the investigation is probably going to cost more than what they gave to the Fabian Society. I think what really needs to be studied is why the expenses of the Labour MPs who've only been in situ for, you know, less than 8 months, less than a year.
Right.
£700,000 he spent on first-class flights around the world.
Yeah,
it's absolutely ridiculous.
But listen, but don't worry, we've got some good news for you on the growth front, you know, Rachel Reeves' favourite subject, because over the weekend, so I'm sure that some of these things happen over the weekend so that they think they'll disappear under the radar, but we're remembering them every Monday morning. AstraZeneca was going to put a new manufacturing plant up in Merseyside to build, to produce vaccines for this country, and of course it was announced last year in the budget that the firm would be expanding its existing facilities in Speke, which is up there near Liverpool, but they've just pulled the plug on it now that Labour are in, because they don't feel confident enough in the actual government policy and in Rachel Reeves' budget. £450 million worth of investment in Merseyside gone like that. Well done, Rachel.
It's absolutely disgraceful. I mean, I think, you know, Rachel Reeves needs to take a leaf out of the Irish government's book and lower corporation tax.
Yeah.
She's put up the national insurance, so it's much more expensive to have employees.
Yeah.
Of course they've pulled their investment. There's no benefit to them to open up a factory here or to, you know, increase the size of their property.
Right.
It's ridiculous. And she hasn't instilled much confidence. I mean, you know, she'd be better placed working as a manager in M&S than the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Well, then she'd probably say in her CV that she was the CEO of M&S, wouldn't she, if she did that?
That's it. I mean, I saw her on TV the other day, and I just think, no, she really, you know, is not suited to this role. And I think it's time that Keir Starmer did a reshuffle and stimulate growth rather than, you know, stifle.
Also, I begin to wonder if she had the same voice coach as Keir Starmer, because they sound similar. I was saying last week, they've almost become like, they speak like one person. They're kind of, you know, they've got this weird accent, which they're sort of morphing into Rachel Starmer, you know?
Yeah, they all sound very feeble. And, you know, I know that, you know, when you look at someone, and even yourself, Mike, you have a very booming, commanding voice.
Oh.
And that's what politicians are meant to have. They're meant to, you know, boost morale, but they don't really do that with their delivery. They just sound feeble and watery and a little bit, you know, wet behind the ears.
Yeah, it really is.
They're not people I'd want to go to the pub with and have a drink with, you know?
They sound like teachers. That's what they all sound like. They sound like the worst kind of parents' evening types, you know? One final one for you. Rachel Reeves, of course, famously went to China a couple of weeks ago and came back with hardly anything at all, you know, £120 million a year over 5 years. But it now turns out that she's done some other deal, because apparently the UK has decided that Russia and Iran are going to face the strictest scrutiny under new plans to root out spies in this country, but China is going to be exempt from it.
Well, you know, they can't really afford to impose tariffs on China. I mean, there's big talk about China open up a huge embassy in Tower Hamlets.
Yeah. I don't think they've been to Tower Hamlets, because if they had been to Tower Hamlets, I don't think they'd want to open a bloody embassy there. I've been there quite recently.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the nicest part of London, but, you know, that's what they're doing. They're trying to stimulate growth, and they're not going to impose these tariffs on the Chinese because, you know, they really can't afford to.
Yeah. No, I think that's the point. Yeah, but I mean, it's one thing not imposing tariffs, but it's another thing allowing spies to kind of get away with spying, isn't it?
Well, it's sort of, I mean, if you were talking earlier about Keir Starmer safeguarding, you know, that's not really safeguarding if you're going to let a load of Chinese spies into the country. I mean, there was already spies in Parliament, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, next they'll be cozying up to Prince Andrew. Oh, no, they've already done that. I mean, never mind. Listen, Joanna, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Joanna Bell, political journalist there.